love that younger kids don't feel the need for a gay space because it's almost like they are part of the mainstream. So they'll go out with straight friends and gay friends, and they'll go out to a restaurant or a gay bar, and that's great. They don't have to think about, do I feel safe and do I have to look here and there? Is someone watching me as I enter this establishment, or I'm associating myself with some people who are very colorful and obviously part of the LGBTQ plus a community, and then report back to work, that am I threatened? They don't have to think about that, and I think that's a great thing. However, when you grow up in that, having this sanctuary where you let your hair down, you don't have to act a certain way, you wear what you want, you're not going to be judged, except by gay men who are very judgmental, for doing that. What 47 Central means to me is totally different to what it means to a young gay man who's, let's say, 25.
I remember being told to get down under the bar. We were on the back wall. They said, just get down and stay there. And somebody came in and there was a fight that happened real fast, and smoke and everybody yelling and screaming, and then it was over. And then it was music back up, and it was back to almost like Studio 54, because that was big at the time.
Yeah, there used to be people that would come in and just start yelling queer and faggot and just slamming things and leave. You'd have to watch leaving the door. They tell you leave with someone and be careful leaving, make sure there's nobody around, that you don't get jumped and everything. And I always said to him, make sure you sit against the wall facing the door so you see what's coming in, and have your escape route planned so you know how to get out in case something happens. So we always sat with our backs against the wall near an exit, so we knew to get out, how to get out.
We learned that from a mafia movie.
Yeah, well, no, we learned that from the guy that ran Dominic's, Marco.
Because we always says, why is he not watching?
Yeah, because there was problems all the time back then. Back in the '80s, back in the early '80s, there was a lot of trouble at Fran's place, like with Blue Note, big brawls all the time. The guys would come in and start yelling. And
but anyway, the cops come by, and at one point, one of them yells out the window, calls us, dykes, and says, "You fucking dykes, go inside, have your fight," or something. And my friend said something to them. I don't know what she said, but she mouthed off, and that was all it took. And they backed up really quickly, got out of the car, grabbed her, slammed her violently on the hood of the car, and was going to proceed to cuff her. And I walk up, so I go over to the police officer, and I'm like, "Hey, you can't do that. You can't just do that." And he hauls off and hits me. And so I hit him back. And his partner is there, and there's a big with me and those two cops, and the next thing I know, there's like an army of cops, and I don't even think they arrested my friend anymore. They all came at me at that point. So it was me and probably 6 police officers, I would guess, and I got my ass kicked. But I end up going to court, and my friends come with me, and there were witnesses to it as well. But so I end up having to go to court. So there was harassment. Yeah, we got harassed by the cops a lot. I don't think we got harassed after that so much, though, after that, because they got into a lot of...
So, I had some friends at work that wouldn't talk to me, and, and they would say, hey, we don't, something would happen, and they'd be like, yeah, we don't want Dave coming in here because he's gay.
Would they say that directly to you or behind your back?
Both. They would say it in front of me, to me, behind my back. They would say it over the radio. And I think a lot because it was the AIDS epidemic and everybody was afraid of that. And because they weren't everybody thought if you were near somebody back then that you would catch, HIV and AIDS, which wasn't, of course, isn't true.
Uh, what was it like to hear your, coworkers, your supposed brothers talking about you like that?
It actually bothered me a little bit. I lucked out because I had a great career. So I became a supervisor, a sergeant after like 2.5 years in the department. And then 9 months later, I became a lieutenant. So I think I had the support of my command staff. And I think that because of that, I was actually, I felt a little, I don't know, I guess more protected. And I didn't let anything bother me. I said, this is how I am. And, I still went into all the incidents, went into the fights. I was still like the first person there. And it never changed me. And even someone who would talk about me and write about me and on notes and on my locker, and someone keyed my car, and I still back that person up because that wasn't me. I couldn't do that because they hated me. That means I didn't hate them because they just didn't know. They didn't understand.
And I remember hearing stories, one person who really touched my heart was John, and he was a very flamboyant, gay man, and obviously a hairdresser. And he shared stories like when he was younger in high school and how like he got the crap kicked out of him daily. I mean, thrown over a banister, like, broken bones. Like, it was horrific when I think of the stories he shared about what it was like growing up. And and as the years went on and the AIDS epidemic, was impacting everybody around us, he had become HIV positive. And back in the South End in Boston, back in those days, there were so many gay bashings and so many people that got hurt and got killed. And I remember the time that he'd been beaten so many times, and this time he was HIV infected, and he actually had medications, and he had his needles that, had his medications in them. And one of the times that he actually survived one of his attacks was he pulled out his needles and told his attackers that he had HIV, and if they came near him, that he would, stab them with his needle, and he got away,
Oh, honey. I just got up and just said, I'm not going to let it down. I'm not going to let it down, honey. Oh, God, I got beat up. I got into a coma. Got beat up and was in a coma for a month, a year, honey. And after I woke up, I just kept going. So this is me. I'm not going to let myself go, but it's my life. I'm going to live it. I'm going to enjoy myself. This is me. I'm not going to change anything about it, okay? If you don't like me, you don't like me. If you do, you do. I'm not going to cry over it.
Do you feel like our culture has become more tolerant over the last?
Yes, that's what I mean. Yes, it has. Like I'm sitting there talking to you now. We couldn't have not done this before. You know what I mean? Talking across the table from each other like this. Mm-hmm. It would have been a long distance before we even got this close together to talk about our lifestyle, which I find very lovely and amusing. I really do, that somebody's taking interest in our lifestyle. It's really about time. Really, it is. For a history professor to take life. Thank you.
Bad. So it was fun. It was exciting. You got to see people that couldn't be themselves in public come in and literally, like, they would strip that off and really show themselves inside the bar who they were. Mm-hmm. And that was somebody that just wanted to live, love, laugh, drink, dance, and be happy with the people surrounding them. Because the outside world, they wanted nothing to do with them. Mm-hmm. Absolutely nothing. So they knew when they came into one of those bars, they were home.
Mm-hmm. And you felt home as well?
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. I actually felt like I was their security system when they were in that building. If somebody tried to come in there to create problems, that was not going to happen on my watch. And when it did, it was few and far between.
Feel like to have 5,000 people show up to cheer you on outside of Cambridge City Hall when you filed for your marriage license?
That was pretty amazing.
It was amazing.
Well, it was just, I felt like it was not really about us. It was really everybody. It was such a terrible year, 2004. If you remember all the things that were going on, we had this war in Iraq, and we had all this stuff going on, and people just wanted to be happy about something, And this was just bang for every progressive person in town. It was in the state. It was just a wonderful thing to happen.
And there were 200 other couples there, we're all lined up, the City Hall, they were, you walked in and
it was a party.
People were in tuxes. I mean, and this was like a complete fluke. It just happened that was the anniversary of Brown versus Education. That night, that date. So we got to talk about that in the press, and live press where they couldn't just edit it. So, it was in the sense that I think we did a good job talking about what it meant to us as a couple and how it, was connected to, equal rights for many communities. So that was, that was really satisfying to be able to do that in the press.
Saturday was very, very emotional because it was one and end of an era. Franz was the oldest gay guy in Massachusetts, and it was an end of an era for me because I had that job since 1986.
I mean, people coming up to you, these are adults my age, maybe even younger, hugging you. I would have killed myself if it wasn't for this place. I mean, it's like, it was just shocking. And it's like, to know, I guess not to know what they really went through. Because when I saw them, they were extremely happy because they were in their home. And they used to call it, this is our house. And they were like my protection. I would be more protected with them than the President of the United States. Anytime there was a fight, if I went over, there was 30 people behind me. And so if I do not ever regret anything, I would do this over again tomorrow if I was younger.
I miss all of Lynn. I'm a Lynner. I have a tattoo on my leg, 781. Born and raised. I go back there frequently. I'm a member of the Brotherhood. I do a lot of advocacy over there. I do a lot of whatever I can do for Lynn. I worked in probably every summer camp there was, the Salvation Army, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club. Any chance that I can give back to Lynn, that was one of my things I always had in my heart because of the way I grew up in Lynn with the family and friends that I had on my street at that time, which I call them my family as of today. I would always go back to Lynn.
It makes me sad and at the same time happy, and I will tell you why. Sad because it's part of your life. It's there was an adjustment. It was difficult, the adjustment stage, but at the same time, it's also, I'm happy knowing that it symbolizes acceptance. The reason why all these bars have closed because the LGBT community is out now. It's out in the mainstream. It's more accepted now. We don't have to hide anymore. And that's the idea of the bars, the clubs, is for us to hide in a sanctuary, a safe environment. Also in the advent of apps, people will tend to have their parties at somebody's homes now and have drink there, watch movie, or instead of going to a bar. So it's good or bad.
This is like what I would like to see in 40 years, right? I will be excited to have less labels, but more language, if that makes sense. I love to be able to have the language to explain things, but I don't like having to fit myself into a box.
It was suggested that we make United Lynn Pride the organization and let go of Queer Lynn Scene. And for all purpose sake, I think it's important to mention that in some ways, we were more willing to do that because we also knew that the name Queerland Scene also had some hesitation pull from the community because queer could, in the past was seen as a derogatory term. And so that would come up on sometimes in our conversations with people. People would ask, why are we calling it Queerland Scene? And in nowadays, using the word queer and people denoting themselves as queer, me included, we use it more as an empowering term. It's sort of like taking back our power. But we also understood that not everybody sees it that way. And so calling it United, just switching to an organization that was under the roof and under the title of United in Pride and making that a nonprofit organization where we really could do a lot more for the community made a lot more sense. Because I also think that it speaks to the power that it didn't matter what our differences were. We were able to find a way and a common ground for us to come together and say, this is the bigger vision. This is the important part, that at the end of the day, we're all serving the same mission. We may just not all agree on where we're at. So I just want to highlight that just the stories that you see online are not the only ones that you should be listening to. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your people, know how you can support one another, and know that it can't always be done so openly and virtually, and that coming out is just as important. And if we can lay a safe space for that in our communities, that's so necessary. So thank you to all who support that work and make that happen.